Welcome to the Breakthrough Podcast. Today, I'm honored to welcome Philip Wade. Philip is a spiritual teacher and guide whose work spans meditation, self-realization, and inner transformation. Philip is best known internationally through his Infinite Silence teachings, a body of work grounded in his own direct experience of true nature of the self, which he describes as infinite silence. Before embarking on his spiritual path, Philip had a successful career as a chartered civil engineer and operating group director in a large business. But in 2009, he stepped away from his corporate life to pursue what he describes as a deep inner calling, rooted in meditation and self-inquiry. He's the founder of gatewaylocations.org, that's his website, a platform offering resources, meditations, retreats, and teachings designed to help others bring peace, awareness, and clarity into their lives. He's also the creator of the Living Soul app, a mobile platform that distills his core teachings and practices, including infinite silence meditations and self-realization resources, into a focused, distraction-free environment supported by a like-hearted community. Today, we're exploring Philip's journey, the essence of infinite silence, and how tools like the Living Soul app are helping people around the world deepen their own experience of inner peace and awareness. Philip, welcome to the Breakthrough Podcast.
Delighted to be here, Steve. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So happy to have you here. So first, I should mention the Living Soul app is on Breakthrough. We're partners on that app. And I discovered you on Insight Timer, and that's kind of how we got together, and we built this app, and now the app's been going for over a year, which is so amazing to see. So first I want to start, I know I kind of gave the intro, but I would like to start at the beginning. You were a civil engineer, a director. You were in the corporate life, making the big bucks, living the dream. What pulled you into this work? What was that turning point?
So I'll give you a potted summary, but essentially in the year 2000, I was on a skiing holiday, and I remember waking up and I dreamt about work, and I said to myself, this has got to stop. In fairly short order, that kind of led to meditation, and I learned to meditate. About 5 years into meditation, I realized that the direction of my life was changing. And it was 4 years later that I took the decision, because of a very strong inner calling I felt, to leave that world behind. I knew something was calling. And then when I left that world behind, and there was lots of changes in that time, the spiritual experiences just took off. There was just endless spiritual insights and experiences. First really major one in 2011, and then the full-blown realization of the self in 2014. And with all those experiences and insights which were off the scale, came a clear confirmation from within that I was to share this message with the world. And that's where the term infinite silence came from. And basically, that's what I've been doing in my life ever since. My life has been dedicated to it. And I'm sure we'll get onto the app bit in a bit, but essentially, that's the part of the next stage of evolution. And that full-blown realization emerged in 2014. I won't go into all the detail of that, but essentially, as that became unequivocally clear, two words emerged in that space, and they were the words infinite silence. And it was like, this is what you are, and this is the term that you should use in sharing this message with the world. That was unequivocally clear. And it's been really absolutely a compelling calling to do that ever since. And my life is dedicated to that. And I was about to go on to say that the app is really the next stage of evolution of that. And the book the same name of the app, the Living Soul, that they come together. So that's how that term came
I
about.
wanna I wanna take a step back into that shift, because so many of us are in that
Mm.
corporate life, in situations that seem normal and perfectly normal on the outside, and probably on the inside they seem normal too.
Mm.
You would really need a microscope to figure out really what's going on, but there's maybe some uneasiness on the surface. Did Had something happened, or was it
Mm.
like, did you run into people say that sometimes to this transformation they go through the dark night of the soul, so to speak, right? There's that term that a lot of spiritual teachers use. Did something extreme happen like that you think triggered it, or was it just like just a kind of a compounding over a matter of whatever months or years?
I wouldn't say I experienced a dark night of the soul. I know a lot of people do, and I think that term is a little bit misunderstood and misused anyway. But but really, it was from 2000 through to 2014. It was an accelerating state of progression of going deeper and deeper inside, and I knew that my life was changing and the direction was changing. And don't get me wrong, it was a
Yeah.
big decision to leave my old world behind because I was right at the
Wow.
top of the profession, in a very senior position, having just turned a big business around and which had and just extended a quarter
Woo,
of £1 billion
woo-wee.
contract for the company. So I was a hero for the client, the
Yeah.
staff, and the company. And that's when I left.
Wow.
Once that had a bit, I just knew that the calling was so strong I couldn't
Wow.
ignore it any longer. I'd been considering it for about 4 or 5 years before that. So it wasn't really a dark night of the soul, but there were definitely profound spiritual experiences
That's
and
awesome.
callings. Mm.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I mean, I feel like there's you can call it whatever you want, like grace of God. This calling maybe doesn't always have to come from the negative side of things. Like 10 years ago, I stopped drinking.
Mm.
I haven't drank alcohol in 10 years.
Mm.
A shameless plug about my life. I haven't drank alcohol in 10 years, and people always ask me, "Hey, did something happen? Or did you get a DUI? Did you end up in rehab? Did you black out?" I'm like, literally nothing happened. It's just one day I woke up
Mm.
and I said, "I don't like this. I'm gonna try something different." Um,
Mm.
so it's. I feel like maybe we share that in like a small way of that shift happening.
Mm.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, the same thing happened with me with alcohol
And
and
meat.
meat. I just yeah, yeah. So for 20, probably nearly 25 years now, not had either, and I've never missed either. Never missed either.
Cool.
Yeah, I
You
would say.
doing some
Yeah.
sort of meditation in that before the 2014? Were you in some sort of spiritual practice, religious practices?
Really, from the year 2000, where I began, and I learned how to meditate. I would say I meditated every day for at least half an hour, even when I was working a
Wow.
60-hour week. And traveling all over the country. Sometimes that would have to be two 15-minute sessions on the train whilst I was going from one place to another. But it was always, I didn't miss that. Always meditated because it was just so
Huh.
beneficial to me. And really, ever since, I've always meditated in one way or another. I didn't have a spiritual teacher. I read one or two books, watched a few videos, and it was made clear to me that I learned complementary therapies. I had to drop all of that, and whilst I was still
Wow.
working, I did that, by the way. It was made clear to me that drop all of that. Don't read anymore. It's coming. Something's coming, and you just need to listen. Yeah. And so it was the inner
Wow.
signs following that. And that's really how it happened for me and how I try to point people as well now.
That's beautiful. So the inner transformations has been happening, it's been building up, and then the change finally happens, and you're like, I need to leave this work. And through the infinite silence, you said, I need to share this
Mm.
with the world. So, how did you start
Yeah.
to share it with the world?
Initially, it was small events because I'd already done some teaching of complementary therapies. I was teaching that, something called quantum touch. So I started saying, look, guys, there's this new stuff is coming through me. Do you want to experience this? And people said
And
yes.
was that, sorry to interrupt, was that just like
And I
friends, people you knew?
no, it wasn't really friends. It was people that I'd been teaching the other
Ah,
therapy,
got
the
it.
content touch therapy too.
So there was an entry
That's where I
point from there.
started with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was an entry point. The initial phase of it was called Spheres of Light.
Right.
That's the other meditation. It turns out Spheres of Light meditation is the entry to the infinite silence meditation. That's what became clear in 2011. So the entry point was to start sharing with the people who'd already
Yeah.
connected with me. I and then from one thing led to another. I met somebody who told me about a place. Oh no, I came across a place where I was actually lived, and I did a seminar there with people. It went down really well. Somebody from that told me about a place called the Sanctuary of Healing, which was a new purpose-built facility about an hour and a half from here. And I did a ton of events there, and I just basically it came from within. I
Yeah.
was to share it for free, and I didn't have a lot of money because I'd left my old world behind at that time. We were a bit tight for money, and I went, really, and it was confirmed it was yes. And I did a load of free events there, and people just had massive transformations. I would start the meditations, and people would have profound shifts in their experience right in front of a group of 30 people. And they would fill up and have long waiting lists and so forth. So it kind of just blossomed from there. And I did a ton of events at this place and then found out other places, went to those. So most of it was external venues initially. I found out about doing live streams on YouTube. So I started doing YouTube live
Uh-huh.
streams. So that was another vehicle. Facebook live streams. I got invited to, I had an inner calling, but I ended up doing a big event in Iceland and went again. Ended up being from Iceland, invited to Amsterdam,
Ah,
invited to Corfu. They kind of just happened, and all of it was kind of like an evolution, exposing the message to people, not being driven really by Philip, but from within. It just kind of grew and grew and evolved and evolved and got clearer and sharper as the years went on. And then like somebody said, "Oh, you should be on Insight Timer,"
yeah.
where you found me. So I did a lot on Insight Timer as well, and that's where you found me. And in that process, there was a knowing that although I shared on so many platforms publicly and on live streams and so forth, each of those had their limitations. And I had a clarity that I would somehow need my own app. And then you approached me one day, and I thought, these are the people.
Uh,
I knew instantly when I got your email. I know it took a while to
sure.
finalize the decision, but I knew instantly that it was that's how it was. I thought, these are the people.
Wow.
This is the setup I've been
That's
looking for. And that really resolved a lot of issues.
sometimes the greater
Yeah.
beyond just gives us that message, and clearly you're so connected to the greater
Mm.
beyond. You know, I like to say that there's many terms for this, right? And you're so connected that you got the message. And
Yeah.
I think the logistical stuff here on Earth kind of takes a little time to happen, where there's no time waiting in the things that are happening in the greater beyond.
Yeah.
And we're all connected. Wait, that's amazing. So you had this
Yes.
insight, like, okay, I'm on all these different platforms, and you still are, which is great because
Yeah.
getting the word out there.
Yeah.
And then you
Mm.
had an insight that I want to do an app. Were you seeing other people who had an app, or did somebody say, "Hey, Philip, I think maybe
No.
you need to have your own app"? Like, talk to me about that.
Somebody, so, to be fair, the lady who did my
Yeah,
initial website did say to me a few years before, maybe you should consider an app. But I had no idea at that time
yeah,
how I would go about it. And I didn't feel the time was right anyway. I remember doing a post on Facebook saying, "Hey guys, if I did an app, would you be interested?" And there was quite a lot of positive. This was several years before you came to me. And I sort of knew in the background, but as I shared more on the other platforms, whilst they're great, like YouTube, Facebook, and stuff like that, and I reached a lot of people, and Insight Timer, and reached a lot of people there. Each one had its limitations and restrictions, and particularly in terms of distractions. And it was clear to me that to resolve all of that, having my own platform, the app, was really going to resolve all of that. And another key part of it was I had recordings for lots of events, retreats, and so forth that didn't feel appropriate to go on a public platform. It felt more appropriate for them to be in a more focused and a distraction-free space. So there were many reasons that funneled all of that into an app is the way forward. Because I'd even looked at online platforms on my website. I'd researched things, like I could integrate with the website, and they didn't seem quite right as a fix. And I know some people do that, and I did look at that, but it just felt that because of the mobility of the app, and it's literally one of the things I always say is anytime, anywhere, that the app brought that as well.
And that's our vision at Breakthrough, and that's always been the vision, is to have it anytime, anywhere, independent of time and geography, and having the teacher in your pocket. I think there's something really powerful about that.
Yeah.
We have immediate access to so much different stuff, from Facebook to YouTube to TikTok to all this kind of to food. You to basically love life. You have immediate access to so much stuff, and I think why not also have immediate access to your self-realization and to your journey, and I think that's why the app makes so much sense.
Absolutely. And the other bit that has come to be more clear to me since I've had it is that, I used to say this anyway, but the app really accentuates this, is that not everybody, and my journey didn't involve going to an ashram for 12 years. That was the kind of timescale people were talking about. It was all direct. Really, the true ashram is in your heart. And what the app does is facilitates that in your own space and at your own time to open the ashram within. And that's how it's all focused. And that's I believe that whilst ashrams and so forth will still be very much part of the future for self-realization, actually, as the world wakens up, and it is wakening up despite all the noise and the chaos, things like people being able to have an app that they can integrate into their own life is really a powerful tool that's only really just become available in the last 10, 20 years, whatever it is. And that's going to be me a big thing going forward in terms of this message, not just with me, but with other people as well. There's only so many in-person events, live streams and so forth, you can do. As you've said many times, the one-to-many aspect of an app allows me to reach people. They can listen in their time zone at their place and still connect.
And the beauty of the one-to-many is like people that may literally live only 5 kilometers from you or from where your event is happening, they have something else going on and they can't join for whatever reason because of time. Time, time or geography, I think are always two factors, right? And they can always get into this like asynchronous experience with an app. For you, you decided to sign with Breakthrough. What made you choose Breakthrough specifically?
The honest answer to that is when I got the first email and I looked at what you do. I was away for a week, not long after my interview with Buddha at the Gospel. Right. That's when you sent me the email, and I said to Sue, these are the people. And there was things in that email that the partnership aspect of it was fundamental. the fact that you had a community of partners that appeared to interact with us, that was something that you also talked about that in the email. And when I looked more deeply, and you sent the contract across, that I've seen many
Right.
contracts in my time as a
Yeah.
chartered civil engineer, and some of them are horrible. And that read to me like a partnership contract. I could see that had been, shall we say, done with care, and not to be biased or one-sided. It looked fair. The key driver was the inner knowing. The other things were confirmatory exercises, wise things that one ought to do if you're going to invest, several £1,000s to create an app. You obviously want to do your due diligence. So I asked Ariel could I speak to a couple of other
Yeah.
partners, just things like that. But really, all of those things were confirming what I already knew. But they were things that were important to do, because you've got to put a business in place, you've got to have the bank account, you've got to explain to the bank why you're doing it. All those things, all those practical things have still got to be done. I knew about contracts, so they were all done, of course, but really it was the inner knowing and the vibe I got when I spoke to Ariel and exchanged messages with you was telling me these are the people to go with. That it's
And
as
now a
simple as
year and a
that.
half, almost year and a half later, is that still true?
That's
Okay.
definitely the case. Absolutely, yeah. There's
Okay.
no doubt. Of course, there's challenges along the way, but I've been in business. I was in business and in civil engineering, and that's a tough world to be in. This is a dream by
Yeah.
comparison.
What would you say surprised you the most along the way about this whole process? And I'll leave that question open, whether it's like in the build process, what was surprising, and this could be good and bad, um, and or afterwards.
I think, yeah, it's been a big learning curve without a doubt. I'm fairly technically au fait, nothing like you guys, but I'm fairly technically au fait. So it was learning a whole new language, and the amount of effort needed to go in to put in, and structuring the content, because I don't everything I'd done up to that point had been very organic. Like, an insight would come, and this is what I'm doing. And what I could see that the app would need a structure, and you recommended a structure, and you did all those short videos to explain all that, which was great, by the way. So pulling all that together into a sensible structure from the vast library I had, it was a lot of work, but I could see that it was essential, and it made a lot of sense for me to do it, and it also made me think about it in a new way. And what I came to was that one of the key things that I think the app brings is that I've got structured content, so we've got the categories, which I've got 10 on the app that I identified, and there's content within that structure. But one of the beauties of self-realization is that, and the app allows this, is the organic nature, so people can search. And one of the things I had on my own journey could just do with some support on, or just feel like it could do with some clarity on. And that's one of the things that's a lot easier on the app in comparison to other platforms like YouTube or Facebook. You just can't really do it so easily. Whereas the app, it's very direct. So structure and organic, the app brings both, as well as the immediacy of the availability. So it was a lot of work, and there were some challenges, but these aren't things that were insurmountable. They're very doable, and the support in the process was good.
What would you say is your favorite part of
Mm.
the platform?
What's my favorite part? I
Uh,
think the partnership. Yeah, the community. It doesn't feel like I'm in this on my
mhm.
own. It feels like both Breakthrough and the other partners are there, and you can learn from each other. And so it's unlike, because I know that I've seen some apps, I'm not going to, and so forth, that it appears that somebody's paid a lot of money. And in
Oh,
fact, I heard some horror stories where people had paid £100,000 and
man,
didn't even
that's
get an
insane.
app. It's the partnership approach that's really the key bit for me that
Mm.
makes it
Oh, I
makes it
love it.
feel right. Yeah,
Let's go business for a second. Talk to me about your
yeah,
structure
yeah.
of
Sure.
what are, how do you manage all that? What are the different things, like the cadences that you have in terms of updating the YouTube, updating, going to Insight Timer, running retreats, and the app? Like, just a high level. I know there's a lot there. You could probably, we could spend next 2 hours just talking about that. But at a high level, how have you set it up right now of updating content and the various structures around that whole thing that
Mm.
makes it all work in conjunction?
The way I see it now is I've got, this isn't entirely the right word, but there's
Mm.
legacy
Sure.
resources, if you like, on Insight Timer, YouTube, Facebook, and there is a lot on each of those. And in truth, there's more than enough for people to realize the self. So I have been updating those, putting new videos on YouTube, maybe the odd new track on Insight Timer, uh, posts on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and so forth. That to inspire people and provide information, but those resources are there and people can use them anytime. And so I see those as space in which people can access these resources freely, and that's very important for a lot of people because not everybody necessarily can afford to invest in an app. But the app really is the distilled, focused environment, and so what I'm putting on those other things is really to say, yeah, continue to use this, but if you want to go into a more focused environment, a more distilled environment, a more private environment, the ashram in your home that I was talking about, then the app is the way forward. That's how I see it. It's not that the other platforms are unimportant. The content on those is phenomenal, and that's not just because I say so. That's feedback from hundreds and hundreds of reviews and comments and things I've done. So it's still profoundly important, but I see it like it funnels people. People will watch that stuff on, say, YouTube, listen to our track on Insight Timer, and a percentage of those will end up in the app. And those are typically the people that I really need to reach because they're ready to go deeper and further. It's not that other people are important, it's just that people are at different places in their journey. And so those things I see as in place for, here's a vast resource library for you. You can use this if it calls you, it speaks to you. But at some point, people are going to say, I need to go deeper with this. And that's where the app comes in. So my strategy is all about having that legacy resource, keeping it going, keeping it alive, but and similarly with in-person events, because people want to see me in person, but all those get recorded and placed on the app.
Yeah,
Does that kind of
absolutely.
cover it?
That definitely does.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, if you were
Mm.
giving advice to a new teacher, let's say, who's had the similar realizations that you had, saying, I need to leave my corporate job, I need to start this, I need to put this infinite
Yeah.
silence, I need to take action on this calling. And obviously, one of the big parts, at least for you, was, hey, I need to
Mm.
get this word out there, right? Like, that basically means building a following. I'm sure you were not like, hey, I'm going to build a
Yeah.
following once I get to this many followers. I'm sure that's not how you were thinking. You seem to be very guided by the
Yeah.
beyond. Would you do the same thing that you did, kind of like in your journey? Which to me, it sounds like you did a lot of events. You got invitations to go to, you know, different events and run retreats and stuff like that, and then also putting stuff out on YouTube, Instagram,
Mm,
YouTube, Insight Timer, Facebook. Would you
mm.
do the same thing, or would you do anything differently when it comes to purely getting the word out there and building an audience online and in person?
I don't think I'd change anything about my own journey. Everything that on the journey has led me to this point. Uh, I wouldn't say it was it was a perfectly smooth flow or anything like that. It was really about trying to listen to what was being called within. But if I was, the question was about
Yeah.
what would I say to somebody else. What I would say is, and this is what I say to people all the time, it's ultimately it's about following your heart as opposed to your head. Because your head will lead you to suffering. That doesn't mean that you ignore practical processes like I was talking about in terms of setting up the app. All of those things will need to happen. But what I mean by following the heart is when there's an inner knowing, it feels uplifting, inviting, expansive. It's crystal clear in that moment, and it's often surprising. And it's about being true, like that Shakespeare saying, to thine own self. And this is the true self, not the ego. Be true. And then you can't be false to anybody. So listen to those signs, follow those signs. And then the practical steps will come. And it also will put in place fears or doubts that you've got about that. And then the answer to that is you have to face those fears, look at those fears from the space of silence awareness, and they will dissolve and fall away. And so the process may be very different for somebody else. You know, I was at the top of the career ladder, but I knew in my case that the way forward was to leave that world behind. For other people, it might be sharing a message within the corporate environment that's connected with this. And I know there's a lot of people do that in the non-duality space. That's not my route, but it is for some. So how it manifests may vary, but you've really got to listen within and get clarity within, and then follow those trails, because it will lead you. It will lead you. And actually, the more clear you get on that, the clearer the practical steps will also become. My own approach was very, very organic. It wasn't about building an audience. It was, I mean, because I even asked the question, why bother? Why bother sharing this? Because when this realization flowers, you see with great clarity that ultimately speaking, everything is okay. Even though it doesn't look like it on the human level, everything's okay. So I asked the question, why share? Deep meditation, the words compelling compassion came for the suffering of humanity. And that's what drives my sharing. So I could have gone about it in a much more structured way, but that wasn't the path. It's getting more structured now by necessity, by virtue of needing to reach but the calling to reach more people, and also the app requires a certain sort of discipline in terms of putting information on there, content on there, and supporting that in a useful way. So that, but for me, all of that prior experience has led to what's here now. And I can't overstate the importance of having had that experience, being in front of people when they're going through monumental shifts. I've seen people try to, who've written a book almost straight away, or started building audiences very, very fast. And actually, I can see that there are some risks and issues with that, because it can be almost before you're ready. Whereas I've taken a very gentle approach to it, very gentle.
Yeah, there's this term at least in the yoga world, because the yoga world has a
Yeah,
lot more westernized than the
yeah,
meditation world. I mean, of course, meditation is part of yoga and so on.
yeah,
But there's this, what is the exact term? It's something like it's the shortcut to enlightenment, where a lot of people have these
yeah,
amazing experiences on, let's say, yoga retreats or even meditation retreats, and then they're like, well, I'm the next
mm,
Buddha. I need to start sharing this. And of course, there's no doubt about the experiences they had. But I do think it takes that time
yeah,
to integrate and to be able to distill it in such a way that it truly, people in multiple different programming and background can attach to that. I mean, and I think this is what's interesting about the social media world, and because you can just put yourself out there very much and very easily and reach potentially
yeah.
millions of people. Um, so it's awesome to see that. So thank you for that. That's that's very
No, you're welcome. You're welcome.
pragmatic and deep and practical advice. So thank you for that. Where
That's
do you
okay. No
see
worries.
the app going in the future?
What's been again from within has been the app is definitely part of. It's a big part of the future because it provides a focal point for um, the resource base and for people to be able to use this material because I can't work one to one with everybody. I could obviously do lots of big events and stuff, but those tend to be kind of like set piece things. The app is your consistent companion. So the app is very much part of the future. The other big part of the future is an insight I had many years ago. I got the title for my book, also called The Living Soul, even before the realization. In my website domain name came before the realization as well. And the message came, will you write this book? And I've left it till now, which is, well over a decade, 12 years on from that insight, longer actually, 13, 14 years by the time it's published. And that was deliberate. It wasn't the right time. But what it's done is they've made the book a distillation of well over a decade of sharing, and that makes it all the better for it. So what's come to me is that the book and the app, and this is the words from the silence, they're marriage partners. So people putting the book out there is central because it will reach more people, but it'll also point people to the app. It'll also reference the other resources, but the obvious place to go to once you've read the book is really the app. And I explain at the end of the book why that's the case. And so those are two key cornerstones in the future because it's been made clear to me it's to reach more people. How that happens, I'm not entirely clear, but the app and the book are definitely part of it. That unfolds, then it's going to help touch those people in a much deeper way. Because people have reported to me, even by watching me on video and so forth, they get the same degree of connection and experience.
Of
Obviously, it's
course.
nice if you can meet people in person, but people find it just as powerful. And the fact that somebody could be, and I've had people from India, I've had people from Australia, I've had people from, all points north,
Yeah.
south, east, and west. And they just wouldn't be able to physically get to where I was, whereas
No
the
problem.
app, no problem. So the app, the book, key tools in reaching
Wow,
more
that's
people.
powerful. And the book is coming out, and I'm thank you for giving me
28th of May,
28th of May. The book
20,
is coming out, The Living Soul, and thank you for giving me
2026,
the
yeah,
honor
yeah,
of sharing the initial draft, and I'm like 85% through it already, and I've really enjoyed the book.
yeah,
The book is really amazing, and it feels I I've been meditating for over 10 years, my own kind of journey, and as I read the book, it's opening things within me that it
yeah,
has this really, it's extremely powerful, but yes, yet a very easy and simple read. It truly feels like I'm hanging out with you and we're talking for hours, you know. So I can't recommend the book enough. I mean, I'm not done it yet, but already I'm like, I think anybody in their journey, honestly, at any stage, can read this book and get something away from it. Anything else you want to share? What's next for you, Philip?
I think for the first time, and this has been coming again from within, for 2026, I've actually put in place, got retreat dates identified for the year. I've got the book launch process mapped out with dates. I've got the community calls for the app dates, all of those scheduled. And probably stuff will be added to that. That's the first time I've done it in such a structured way. And I realised that it's necessary for me to be able to kind of focus it and people to have some clarity about what's coming next. It hasn't something like, oh, my mind thought that. It was more a case of now you need to put this in place and have that framework around which things will be built. So I've actually going to be emailing my lists of people and so forth, probably today, if not tomorrow or over the weekend. Here's what's coming in 2026. That was to have a 12-month program of events, and that's what that. I've kind of got 3 slides. I've split it into book stuff, retreats, and community, but they're all integrated. They're not separate from one another.
What keeps you inspired and connected?
I meditate for an hour every day, even though there's just calm and peace here always. But what really keeps me inspired is that word, those 2 words I mentioned earlier, was the compelling compassion. I look at the world and I see great suffering, and there's a knowing it doesn't have to be like that. So that is a key part. But another really key one is when I share, like I got an email out of the blue the other day from somebody who'd found me when I was on the BBC Radio 4 earlier this year. She downloaded the app, completed, can you believe, the 90-day program. She may be the first person. A 90-day program. And it was a mega commitment for that program. I mean, you're talking hours and hours and hours for 90 days. And I got an email, and like this lady had found it transformative, and she's so excited about it. She wants to dive deeper into the app. She wants to join the events next year. And every now and again, I get an email like that. All right, in the app, you can see endless wow type experiences or so grateful type comments. And when you see the shifts in people, and I've had the good fortune of actually seeing quite a few people now not come to actual realization. I've been in their presence when it's transpired for them. And that is, you just cannot put that into words. And the amount of shifts of pain, trauma, whatever you want to call it, that I've seen, I've just lost count of. And just to see that and how grateful people are when they experience that, money can't buy it. That's what keeps me going.
That's very powerful. And I just want to say, to close, every time I turn on the news, and I mean, I don't have to turn on the news, I just go on social media and the news shows up, right? And there's so much suffering in this world, left, right, and center.
Mm.
And the world does seem to be getting crazier and crazier. But at the same time, I look at people like yourself, Philip, and what you're doing. You've literally dedicated your life to it, turned away millions of pounds and dollars, right, in the grand scheme of things. And you're literally dedicated to this work, and you're creating this community. So this makes me incredibly optimistic for our future, and for the future that's being built for our kids and our kids' kids. So Thank you so much for all the work you do, and thank you so much for sharing this time with me.
No problem at all. It's a
Thank you,
joy.
Philip.
A joy.
Um, okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much.